You wake up in the morning, open your phone, and before you even take a deep breath, dozens of notifications, emails, news, and messages flood your mind. In those few seconds, the outside world has already taken hold of your attention. You begin the day in reaction, not in control. I once had a patient, a successful businessman in New York, who told me he was doing well. He had money, status, and success, but when I asked, "Do you truly feel at peace?" he fell silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "I feel like I've been running my whole life, but I don't even know where I'm going." Maybe you felt that too, that strange emptiness even when everything seems to be going according to plan. We live in an age where self-care has been misunderstood. People think it means spas, vacations, shopping, or small comforts. But Stoic philosophy, lived and breathed by Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, teaches the opposite. Self-care isn't self-indulgence, it's self-discipline. It's the training of the soul so that even when the world around you falls into chaos, your heart remains calm and unshaken. I've worked with all kinds of people, entrepreneurs from Silicon Valley, young mothers overwhelmed by work and family, and even soldiers returning from war. They all shared one belief, that to be loved, they had to be perfect. But the Stoics taught something radically different. You can only love yourself when you understand yourself. And you can only understand yourself when you have the courage to face your own mind. Stoicism, a philosophy that seems rigid, is in fact one of the most refined arts of living. It doesn't tell you to suppress emotions, but to walk through them without drowning. It doesn't tell you to avoid pain, but to look it straight in the eye and smile. Most importantly, it teaches you how to build an unbreakable relationship with yourself. So imagine this, every morning you start your day in stillness, write a few honest lines in your journal, give thanks for another sunrise, and step out into the world with the mindset, I command my mind. How different would life feel? If you could say no to what drains your energy, if you could be grateful even for hardship, if you could embrace challenges instead of avoiding them, you'd feel the real power of serenity. That is the spirit of today's video. Together we'll explore 11 Stoic habits to help you love yourself and become unbreakable. Habits practiced by emperors, philosophers, and warriors for thousands of years, and how to bring them into modern life, into your mornings, your work, and every moment you feel lost or weak. This isn't just a list of things to do, it's an invitation to return to yourself, to reconnect with your soul, and to begin again. Because true freedom doesn't come from controlling the world, it comes from controlling your reaction to it. And true self-love begins the moment you stop running away from yourself. 1. The practice of stillness. A friend once told me, I can't stand sitting still. When it's quiet, my mind gets louder. I smiled, because that's what everyone feels. We don't fear stillness because it's boring. We fear it because, in stillness, we finally hear ourselves. The Stoics saw stillness as strength. Seneca once wrote, "Nowhere is more peaceful than the mind of a man who has been trained." When you spend just 10 minutes a day sitting in silence, no phone, no music, only your breath and awareness, you are training your mind to stay calm in the storm. I once guided a middle-aged woman through anxiety. She practiced 5 minutes of morning stillness every day. 6 weeks later, she told me, I still have problems, but now I'm no longer their victim. That is the miracle of stillness. It doesn't erase the problem, it gives you the strength to move through it. 2. Brutal honesty journaling. Marcus Aurelius, the great emperor of Rome, wrote every night, not for others to read, but to speak to himself. His words were not polished, they were raw, simple, and honest. It was the Stoics' most trusted form of soul therapy. A student once said to me, I don't know who I am anymore. I told him I'd write. Not what you want to be, but what you feel right now. 3 weeks later, he brought me his journal, pages filled with ink-stained truth. I'm afraid of being judged. I'm afraid to fail, but I'm also afraid of doing nothing. I smiled and said, now you've begun to know yourself. Writing is self-observation. It allows you to step outside your emotions and see them clearly. You don't need to write beautifully, only truthfully. Because only truth can change you. Every night ask yourself, did I act with wisdom today? Did I stay calm? Did I live by my values? That's how you train your soul, quietly but deeply. Third, living by virtue. Virtue is the foundation of all Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if there is anything better than justice, courage, temperance, and wisdom, pursue it. If not, hold fast to these. The Stoics believed happiness doesn't depend on how much you have, but on how rightly you live. When I teach Stoicism, I often ask, what made you proud this month? Most answer with achievements, income, or recognition. But when I ask, what made you respect yourself? Silence. Because deep down we know, self-respect comes from integrity, not success. To live with virtue is to know when to stay silent instead of argue, when to pause instead of react, when to choose what's right over what's easy. It's not moral superiority, it's spiritual discipline. And that discipline is the highest form of self-love. 4. Negative visualization. It sounds strange, doesn't it? Why would anyone imagine bad things? But Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus all advised it. Not to be pessimistic, but to awaken gratitude. When you imagine losing what you love, a person, a job, an opportunity, you're not inviting tragedy, you're learning to appreciate the present. Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The Stoics practiced so that when loss truly came, they would not collapse, because their minds were already prepared through wisdom and gratitude. I once lost a dear friend in an accident. I broke down until I remembered Epictetus's words. When you kiss your child or your friend, remind yourself they are mortal, that they may be gone tomorrow. From that day, I learned to love people more deeply, not because they'd stay forever, but because they are here now. Try this tonight. Before you sleep, think of one thing you might lose tomorrow, and instead of fearing it, whisper, thank you that I still have it today. That one thought can turn your heart toward life with gratitude. 5. The dichotomy of control. If there's one Stoic rule you should remember forever, it's this. There are things within your control and things beyond it. It sounds simple, yet most human suffering comes from not knowing the difference. Epictetus began his Enchiridion with, some things are up to us and some are not. When you understand this, you become free. When you forget, you become a slave to circumstance. A soldier I once coached, a veteran of Afghanistan, told me, I can't stop thinking about those I lost. I told him, that's beyond your control, but how you live to honor them, that is within your power. He fell silent, then nodded. From that day he began writing letters to his fallen brothers, a way to keep them alive in spirit. You can't control the weather, other people or outcomes, but you can always control your attitude, your effort and your response. That's the freedom no one can take away. 6. The art of calm in action. One thing that makes Stoicism extraordinary is this. It doesn't preach peace only in stillness. It teaches peace, it is in motion. Marcus Aurelius didn't meditate in a temple, he meditated on the battlefield, amid the clash of swords and the weight of decisions that shaped an empire. A doctor once told me, I can't meditate, I'm always working. I said, that's exactly when you should meditate. Because meditation isn't about sitting still, it's about awareness. When you wash the dishes, just wash the dishes. When you work, just work. When you breathe, just know that you're breathing. That's how Stoics stay centered, not trapped in the past or lost in the future. Modern life glorifies busyness, but Stoicism reminds us that uncontrolled busyness is a subtle form of chaos. Start with one thing at a time, done with full presence. When you live moment to moment, you realize peace isn't something to seek, it's something that's already here, waiting for you to notice it. 7. Voluntary discomfort. In a world obsessed with comfort, this may be the hardest, yet the most powerful habit to master. Seneca once wrote to his student, "Set aside a few days each month and live with as little as possible, simple food, rough clothing, a humble bed, and ask yourself, is this what I feared?" Stoics don't seek pain, they train not to be ruled by it. I once led a group of entrepreneurs in a simplicity week. No luxury, no social media, no alcohol, no excess. The first day was miserable. The third, they began to laugh. By the 7th, they said, "I feel lighter." Freer. When you voluntarily step into discomfort, you send a message to yourself. I am not dependent on the external. I am stronger than my circumstances, so walk instead of drive. Take a cold shower, eat less, choose silence over argument. Not to punish yourself but to remind yourself that freedom lives in simplicity. 8. The art of saying no. We live in an age where saying yes is seen as positive, a sign of opportunity and openness. But the Stoics knew, wisdom begins when you learn to say no. Seneca warned, no one is too busy to live, but many waste their lives as if they were immortal. Think about it, how often do you say yes just to avoid disappointing someone? How many meetings, messages and favors drain your energy and add no meaning? One of my students once told me, "I'm afraid to say no, I might lose my chance." I asked him, "But aren't you losing yourself right now?" He went silent soon, and that was the moment he understood. Time is the Stoics' most sacred asset. Protect it with discipline. Every time you say no to the meaningless, you say yes to peace, to what matters, to your soul. Before agreeing to anything, pause and ask, is this truly worth my energy and mind? If the answer is, I'm not sure, then the real answer is no. 9. Detachment from outcomes. Stoics are not indifferent, they are simply not controlled by results. Epictetus said, act with all your heart, but do not place your heart in the outcome. You can give your best effort, and still the world may turn differently, because outcomes depend on countless things outside our control, weather, people, timing, chance. The Stoic sees outcomes as part of nature's flow. Before a national tournament, one of my athletes asked, what if I lose? I told him, if you compete with clarity, discipline, and calm, you never lose. Detachment doesn't mean you lack goals, it means you act from purpose, not from fear. You give your best and then let go. Because happiness isn't when everything goes as planned, it's when you stay at peace regardless of how things unfold. 10. Daily gratitude awareness. When life moves too fast, gratitude is often the first thing we forget. But for the Stoics, gratitude is the root of serenity. Seneca wrote that it is not happiness that makes us grateful, but gratitude that makes us happy. A patient of mine once suffered from depression. I asked him to write down 3 things he was grateful for each night. He laughed. I have nothing to be grateful for. 3 weeks later, he said, I started writing about small things, my morning coffee, sunlight on the wall. Slowly I realized, I'm not as miserable as I thought. Gratitude transforms your perspective. When you're grateful, you stop living in lack and start living in fullness. When you're grateful, you stop comparing and start understanding. Try this tonight. Before you sleep, whisper, "Thank you, Rusir, for this breath, this day, this chance to love and learn." A single moment of gratitude can shift the entire vibration of your soul. 11. Morning reflection, and finally the habit that ties all others together. Morning discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations while ruling an empire surrounded by war, betrayal, and loss. He began each day writing to himself, not to complain but to prepare his mind. "This morning I shall meet people who are ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, jealous. They act this way because they do not know good from evil." That was his ritual of mental strength. Before the world steals your peace, give the first 10 minutes of your day to yourself. No phone, no email, just breath and reflection. Ask yourself 3 questions. What is within my control today? What virtue do I want to embody? What am I grateful for this morning? 10 quiet minutes. That's all it takes to reshape your day, your energy, your life. You'll become clearer, calmer, and eventually untouchable. Maybe as you've listened this far, you feel something shifting, a calm awakening inside you. Perhaps a part of you realizes the wisdom of the Stoics, written 2,000 years ago, is exactly what you've been searching for in the noise of modern life. Because in the end, we all seek the same thing, a life that is peaceful, strong, and meaningful, not by having everything, but by having ourselves. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Your life is shaped by your thoughts. Change your thoughts and you change your world." That is the true gift of Stoicism. Not as theory, but as transformation through action. When you begin your day with stillness, when you write the truth of your emotions, when you say no to distractions, when you face your fears with grace, when you find gratitude even in loss, you become the leader of your own mind. I've seen something remarkable in those who live by Stoic principles. They don't need the world to change for them to be happy, they just change how they face the world. And from that, they radiate calm, strength, and quiet confidence. But remember, knowledge alone won't change you. Stoicism transforms only when practiced daily. When you pause before reacting, when you breathe instead of arguing, when you write the truth of your fear, that's when philosophy becomes power. That's why I created this channel, Stoic Awakening More, to be your gentle reminder to return home to yourself. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to begin. So ask yourself, if for the next 7 days you lived as a Stoic, starting each day with reflection, ending each with gratitude, mastering your emotions, acting with discipline and letting go of what you can't control, would your life feel different? Would you feel lighter, stronger, freer? I believe you would, because Stoics are not superhuman. They're simply human, awake, aware, and alive. If today's message resonated with you, if even one sentence made you pause and reflect, then I invite you to join this journey. Subscribe to Where Stoic Awakening More, where every video is a quiet conversation between you and your soul, where Stoicism is no longer ancient words, but a living compass for modern life, for you, for me, for all of us learning to love ourselves through wisdom and discipline. Let every morning be not a race, but a ritual of awareness. Let every night end not in worry but in gratitude. Because peace doesn't come from avoiding life, it comes from living it fully, with a steady mind. And if one sentence from this video made you stop and think, that's not a coincidence. It's a sign you are ready to awaken. Welcome to Stoic Awakening More, where every day is a step back home to yourself. And remember, you cannot control the world, but you can always control how you live within it. If you're ready, begin today.